An extraordinarily rare and extremely significant archaeological discovery has been unearthed in Jerusalem.
In the rugged cliffs of northern Israel, an artifact that should not exist has reportedly been found. Sealed for 2 millennia within a hidden chamber, it contains a message not meant for the world, but for one man. A message allegedly written by the most influential figure in human history. This is, without a doubt, one of the most paradigm-shifting things we have ever discussed. A personal letter from Jesus? If this is real, it changes not just history, but everything. When whispers of the discovery escaped the confines of academia, they ignited a global firestorm of awe and controversy. But what was truly found in that Galilean cave? And why do some claim that its contents reveal a truth that powerful forces have tried to suppress for centuries? The answer lies buried beneath a mountain that has guarded its secrets since the time of Christ. The cliffs of Mount Arbel. They rise from the western edge of the Sea of Galilee like jagged sentinels, their limestone faces scarred by time and conflict. For archaeologists, this is sacred and violent ground. These caves served as desperate shelters for Jewish rebels fighting Herod the Great, and later as solitary refuges for the first followers of a new faith. It is a landscape steeped in history, a place where echoes of the past cling to every stone. In 2023, a team of researchers operating under a partial media blackout were exploring a series of unmapped cave systems. Inside one, its entrance almost completely obscured by a rock slide that likely occurred in late antiquity, they found an anomaly. Beyond the scattered pottery shards and limestone dust, typical of the period, a small, deliberately carved chamber was revealed. And in its corner, something was waiting. It was not a weapon nor a tool. It was a small stone box, its design smooth and ceremonial, bearing no resemblance to common ossuaries of the time. The container was sealed. Traces of hardened beeswax mixed with a dark resin still clung to the lid, a clear indication that its contents were meant to be protected indefinitely. This was not storage. This was a time capsule. Inside, nestled in the remnants of what was once linen cloth, lay a single rolled parchment. The preservation was astonishing. Under specialized multispectral imaging, faint lines of script materialized. The language was immediately identifiable: Aramaic, specifically the Galilean dialect, the common tongue of first-century Judea, the vernacular of Jesus of Nazareth and his disciples. That detail alone sent shockwaves through the project. While religious texts are often found, personal documents from this era in this specific dialect are virtually unheard of. The script itself was not the precise hand of a trained scribe copying scripture. It was uneven, the ink flow varying, suggesting it was written by an individual, perhaps in a moment of haste or deep emotion. The tool? Likely a simple reed pen. The ink, a primitive pigment of soot and oil. But it was the salutation, barely visible in the initial scans, that elevated the find from extraordinary to world-altering. The text began not with a prayer, but with an address: "To my brother." Before the full weight of this discovery could be understood, one name began to surface in the hushed conversations of theologians and historians: James the Just. Known in Hebrew as Yaakov HaTzadik, James was one of the most enigmatic and revered figures in early Christianity. The historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century, identifies him as the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ. After the crucifixion, while Peter and Paul carried the message to the Roman world, it was James who became the pillar of the nascent church in Jerusalem. He was a man who walked a tightrope between two worlds, deeply devoted to Jewish law, yet a firm believer in his brother's teachings. Ancient sources describe his piety as legendary, claiming he spent so many hours in the temple that his knees became calloused like a camel's. He was a figure of profound integrity, respected even by those who rejected his faith.
If this letter was indeed addressed to him, it would represent a document unlike any other, not a public sermon or a parable for the masses, but a private, intimate exchange between two brothers standing on the precipice of a storm that would change the world. It would be a message from the heart of the family, from behind the veil of the divine. As fragments of the translation were discreetly circulated, the true nature of the message began to emerge. It was not a theological treatise. It was a confession, a lament, and a farewell. One line reads, "Brother, the days grow heavy with sorrow, yet the light that was from the beginning remains unshaken." The tone is one of weariness, of a man grappling with the burden of his own purpose. Another more haunting fragment states, "They see only the fire, but not the hand that lit it. They repeat my words, but do not wait to hear my heart." This is not the voice of a triumphant Messiah. It is the voice of a teacher profoundly misunderstood, even by his most fervent followers. But the most staggering revelation, the phrase that has since captivated millions, is one of profound, almost shocking empathy. "Forgive those who use my name too quickly. They are not thieves. They are hungry." Here, divine judgment is replaced by human understanding. Zealotry is reframed not as a sin to be condemned, but as a symptom of a deep spiritual hunger. If authentic, these words would reveal a strikingly human side of Jesus, a man burdened by a message too heavy for the world, seeking solace not in a disciple, but in his own kin. This humanity is precisely why the discovery proved so controversial. The moment the story went public, the scientific and academic worlds responded with a wall of professional skepticism, and for good reason. No verified writing by Jesus has ever been discovered. The statistical probability of a personal letter surviving 2,000 years in a non-arid climate, even in a sealed container, is infinitesimally small. Dr. Elara Vats, a leading philologist at the University of London, was among the first to voice a specific data-driven critique. While the Aramaic is masterful, our analysis of the syntax revealed a grammatical construction, a particular use of the subjunctive that is far more common in the Syriac Aramaic of the 3rd or 4th century. It suggests a later author with an almost perfect command of an archaic style, but not a 1st century native speaker, Dr. Vance said firmly.
Furthermore, initial carbon-14 dating results were reported as inconclusive. The parchment dated broadly to the Roman era, but the organic resins in the wax seal showed anomalies, suggesting potential contamination or a more complex history. The Israel Antiquities Authority has remained silent, issuing no official statement, a silence that conspiracy forums interpreted as proof of a cover-up. The narrative was born. They are trying to hide this from us. Historians pointed to a long history of pious forgeries, or pseudepigrapha, texts written centuries later but attributed to famous figures to lend them authority. Could the Arbel parchment be a masterful example, created by an early Christian mystic trying to capture the emotional truth of his faith? In the end, the fierce debate over authenticity may be a distraction from a more profound question. Why does this story, real or fabricated, resonate so deeply? Perhaps it's because the alleged message strips away 2 millennia of doctrine, empire, and religious grandeur to reveal something we have all but forgotten: the man. A man who felt the weight of his own truth, who understood human frailty, and who sought comfort in his family. The words from the cave, "The truth must be carried, and not all hands are made for its weight," speak directly to our own fractured modern age. They echo in the soul of anyone who has ever felt misunderstood or has watched a beautiful idea become twisted by those who claim to champion it. Whether the parchment is a genuine relic or a beautiful allegory, it functions as a mirror. It forces believers to question the nature of their founder, skeptics to acknowledge the power of myth, and all of us to consider the line between the historical and the divine. The Arbel parchment may never be fully authenticated,
It may remain a mystery, suspended forever between history and legend. But its discovery has already unearthed an undeniable truth. The real revelation is not what might be written on a fragile scroll, but what the story reveals about ourselves, our unending desire to hear a whisper of humanity in the voice of God. And it leaves us with one final, haunting question. What other truths still lie buried in the hills of Galilee, waiting for the world to be ready to hear them?